I think it's recording. I didn't hear a beep. So we have looked at this point. Let's see. Hold on. Let's a little recap. We've talked about that all matter is made of particles, and that how much stuff there is, or the measure of how many particles there are, is what we call mass. We talked about the law of conservation of mass, which means you can't create or destroy the particles, that whatever the mass is in a closed system, it has to stay that way. And that if it doesn't, it's because you let particles in or out. So we went through all of that. Then we talked about volume being how much space something takes up, or the amount of space in a container, which is what we just looked at for the volume lab. We also found out then that, let's see. Well, we found out that a centimeter cubed and a milliliter, same thing, exactly the same amount, which was kind of laid out on this screen here, which I believe was in the last video. So again, the metric system was set up intentionally, so that a 10 by 10 by 10 box, 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeter box, is the exact volume that they called a liter. That they decided, hey, we're going to make a unit of measure for volume, call it a liter. Well, how big should we make it? Well, let's make it 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. Which means then that 1,000 centimeters cubed is 1,000 mLs, which is what we call a liter. Okay, it was intentional, because if you take a ruler or a yardstick or something and measure in inches, 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch, that cube, that has no meaning. It's not a fluid ounce. It's not like so many tablespoons. I mean, it's not an even number of any of those things, because there was no connection between gallons and quarts and pints and cups and fluid ounces, no connection between that and the ruler. When they developed the metric system, they thought it was important to do that. And it is kind of important, and it's a good thing they did that. So that's that. Now I would like to take a look at, oh no, is this it? No, that's not it. Oh my gosh, where is it? Oh, tell me it's lost. Not this. Here it is. So I would like to look at what the relationship is between mass and volume. Okay, what is the relationship between mass and volume? That's the question. So we already know what mass is. We figured that out. And we did some experimenting to figure that out. We know what volume is. And then we did some other experimenting to kind of talk about volume and to wrap our minds around that. Now I'd like to look at both of them at the same time. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to have a mass versus volume lab. Now, again, if you missed Wednesday or Thursday this week, depending on what period you have, then you missed this lab. And so we're looking at aluminum and we're looking at PVC. I have cylinder sets that look like this. So they look like this right here. Here is a PVC set. PVC is plastic. Polyvinyl chlorate is what that actually stands for. So I have a cylinder set that looks kind of like what it's in the picture there. So, oh my gosh, kind of like your cell phone signal bars. So cylinders of different lengths, but these are all PVC. I also have sets of aluminum cylinders that are, kind of a silvery gray color, lighter color, metal. So each group measured both sets, the masses of each cylinder and the volumes of each cylinder. Now, I did some work for you here, and I figured out what the diameter was using a vernier caliper, which is one of these, which measures more precisely and therefore probably more accurately than a ruler will. And so I measured the diameters for you so that you had good radius values that you could actually use to calculate the volume of these cylinders. And so that's what everybody was doing in class, right? They measured the height of each of the cylinders, I gave them the diameter and therefore the radius. So they calculated these volumes. They measured the masses by taking them to the scales and setting them on the electronic balances. And so they got all that data. Once they collected all that data, they made a graph like this using the graphical analysis app. That's how we did this. And I told them, because there is no clear manipulative and responsive here, I told them to put the mass on the vertical in grams and to put the volume in centimeters cubed on the horizontal, and that's how the graph is to be set up. So in your comp book, then you would sketch this information. Now, because you weren't here to get this data, I have some data for you. So I'm going to scroll down in a second here and show you the data that you would have gotten had you done this in class. And it's my data that I collected, which is, it's okay, I guess. And so this would be your data. You need to write this down in your comp book. Well, first of all, you need to write all this stuff down. So this is like notes, stuff that you would take. So hopefully you have already sketched this stuff down. You will have to sketch the graph eventually in your comp book as an assignment. So when you sketch this part here, make it big enough that you can write some things around it, on it, and around it, because you'll have to do that for an assignment that's due for your next block. Now, again, this is the data. Okay, so if you need to pause the video right now to write this data down, then do that. And notice I have them labeled PVC and aluminum, the masses and the volumes of both, measured in grams for masses and centimeters cubed for volume. So write that stuff down, pause the video, get the data. Now I'm going to head over to graphical analysis, and I'll tell you how to set this up. So once you get to this point, set up your graphical analysis, and you'll see that I already have on my data table here, I've already set some things up. First of all, you'll need to go to the top because yours says data set 1 up here in the corner. You will go to these 3 dots where it says rename data set, and you'll rename it. I called it PVC, so I can tell it apart. Then go down here and on your column options, and you'll click on column options, and then you will name it. Now, again, I named it volume, measured in centimeters cubed, and then I clicked apply because that's the X, and that's what's going on the X-axis. Then for the Y part, for the PVC, you will click here again, column options, and then you will name that mass measured in grams, and you will click apply. Now that will give you a data set for PVC. Now, apparently some people have this and some people don't, but no, I should say this. One person doesn't have this in the app. I don't know why it's not in that person's app, but add new data set is an option that you need to click. When you click add new data set, you will see then a whole other data set show. Oh boy, oh no, oh, that's a bad thing. I'm just gonna leave that there. You will see a new volume column and a new mass column, and then you'll see aluminum. Or no, you'll see data set 2, and then you'll have to go in here to the 3 dots, rename data set, and then you can name it aluminum. That way you have a PVC data set and an aluminum PVC set, or aluminum data set. Gosh, my brain. Now, if for some reason when you did this, you did not have add new data set as an option for you, then you're going to have to go do this a different way. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to click on this, column options, add manual column. And then it will put another column next to the volume column, and you can name it volume, and I would probably call it like aluminum volume, so that you know that it's different than the other volume. And then you'll have to go over here to the mass column and do the same thing. You'll have to click on the mass column, column options, but you'll go to add manual column to create another mass column, and I would call that aluminum mass for your new column. That's if you can't create a second data set. Because if you look at this, if I can move this thing over, oh no, can I move this over? What the? Oh no, why won't this? Why can't I move? Why can't I? Oh, I want to make my table wider. It won't let me. Oh, that makes me mad. Well, okay. So I can't see all the data at once, but you can see I can scroll back and forth here. I got the PVC data set, the aluminum data set. Now, I had already cut my data out of here, but before I put it back in, there's a couple other things you need to do for your graph to make sure it's set up right. The one, remember, is you go down to the graph tools, edit graph options, always show 0, always show 0. Now, right now it's showing this should be 0, this should be 0 when you do that. Now I got my origin down here where I want it. Now, something else you may have to do. On this part, you may have to click on the mass here that you see on the vertical part. Make sure that mass is checked and that both of your data sets are checked. So you want both data sets checked on here, or your data won't all show up. Now on the x-axis, the volume is what you want. You don't want mass there, you want volume on the x-axis, and so just keep it like that. Now, I've got to see, I hope I can paste this back in here. Oh, good. So once you enter that data, it's going to look something like this. And by something like this, I mean exactly like this. If it doesn't look like this, then you have a problem. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that this red data set, that looks like a straight line. Looks like straight line data. The blue data set, it looks like straight line data. And so what I'll do, and they've got different colors because you have two different data sets showing. Two different data sets, data is on your graph. You have masses for both PVC and aluminum on here. So I am going to go down to Graph Tools again now that I have the data points showing, and I'm going to apply Curve Fit. And again, it's going to put a linear fit on here by default, and it looks fine to me because those data points look like they are a straight line. Now, if you'll notice, I have a box now with two different things. I have a red set of data here stuff, and I have a blue set of data stuff here. Now, which one is which? Like which the blue, red or the blue is which one? Well, if you look here, I'm going to assume that the blue one, oh, wait a minute, that's weird. I don't know that there's any way to be able to tell this. Reading this, so it, well, I guess you can tell. If you unclick one of them, so apparently aluminum is blue. Aluminum is blue because that's the only one that's active right now. That means PVC is red. Okay, so you can tell them apart. So the PVC is the red one. The blue one is the aluminum. I can get that box out of here. So now, here's what, for your assignment, which is loaded on Classroom. It tells you what to do on Classroom. You are supposed to sketch this graph in your comp book, kind of like what we started with here. So this sketch, so you're going to have two lines on this graph right here, two lines, one for aluminum, one for PVC. And you will write down the slope. So that's the slope for the aluminum one. This M is the slope for the PVC one. Notice it doesn't tell you the units. You have to figure that out based on what you see on the graph. So you will have to write down the unit of measure on the slope in your sketch here in your comp book. So you'll have two lines on there. You'll have two different slopes, one for each of those lines. And then below the graph, you will write out the meaning of each of those slopes. Like you'll say, like, for aluminum, there are blah, 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 blah. And you'll write out in a sentence the meaning of the slope, like we've been doing for all of our slopes that we find in class. All right? And that's what your assignment is. The sketch of the graph here with the lines on it, with the slopes on it, with units of measure on the slope, and then sentences, one for each of them, describing what those slopes are telling us about those substances, the PVC and the aluminum. All right? So that's That's what you have to do for the assignment. This is what we did today. And then we will talk a little bit more about that when we come back at the next block. So hopefully this helped if you weren't here and you at least have some idea of what we did in your absence. Get this stuff done though. Get that data, put into graphical analysis, save the file as something. Oh my gosh. If you have to go up here, click on this thing here, right? Click right here in the upper left corner. Save as and call it something. Probably mass volume lab is what I would call it if I were you. Save as, otherwise you will lose it. You'll close it and it'll be gone and you'll have to redo the whole thing. Make sure you save it. Okay, I think that's it. Have yourselves a great day and we'll see you later. Take care of yourselves.